50 years ago, um, a movie, one movie, one movie, um, completely redefined everything, I would think. Redefined the way that people would often around the world swim alone, including me. Never swim alone again. Um, Redefined what we thought about the summer blockbuster. Um, this is the story of Jaws. Redefined Hollywood, invented the summer blockbuster, um, and 50 years later is still resonating today. Doo-doo, 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 doo-doo. So, 1975, Spielberg, Steven Spielberg, to give his full and correct name, Mr. Spielberg, to be polite, I guess. Spielberg was 27 years old. He made a few movies, or a few TV movies, and a few sort of TV specials. He'd made, oh my God, one of my favorite films ever, actually, a film called Duel, which many people have heard about, a TV movie about a truck attacking or chasing a car. Dennis Weaver driving his car, chased by the truck. A great, great film. But anyway, I digress. So he made a few things. And he was going to be making this film about a killer shark. The problem was in the summer of 75, I'm guessing when it was done, things weren't going very well. Bruce, Bruce, Bruce the Shark, as it was named, a big animatronic model shark, pre CGI, pre special effects, which kind of was the genius that came around. Talk about that in just a moment. Um, but this big shark that he'd designed that was going to be this centerpiece, big centerpiece, kind of like the King Kong thing from back in the day. Godzilla, whatever it might be. Jaws was going to be it. Um, the problem was the shark didn't work. The problem was it was pants. It kept getting the water kept getting in because we're filming it in the ocean. No kind of studio whatever. It was in the ocean that it was being filmed. Um, the studio heads were getting nervous. Spielberg was getting nervous that he was going to be sacked. Um, it was over budget. It was a disaster. They had big names or fairly big names in the cast, and it was in danger of being a complete and utter financial disaster. What then happened in terms of how this turned around is a great film, probably in itself, and a great story in itself, because this, once it hit the cinemas after these problems had been overcome, became this just thing that swallowed Hollywood. And it became one of those cinematic centerpieces that many of us, particularly growing up in the 70s through the 80s, would experience again and again and again with this and things like Raiders of the Lost Ark and um, going on Star Wars, obviously, Star Trek, yeah, Priestman, all these other, many of these kind of cinematic milestones that became events outside Hollywood, became pop culture events. This was huge. Um, Slightly bit of a caveat here in terms of when it came out. I think Christmas over here in the UK. I believe people might put me wrong, and people often do, but I think it was Christmas 1975, Boxing Day ish over here. Um, I couldn't go. I was only 9 years old, and my parents thought watching a killer show because it was only a low rating. I seem to remember ridiculously. It was like, was it a parental guidance thing, maybe? Um, my mum and dad wouldn't let me go. Did I sulk? Oh yeah, because by this point it was everywhere. Adverts, newspapers, news, toys were coming out, all this stuff. It had become this thing had just become huge. This film has suddenly become huge after being, these the kind of trials and tribulations, which I'll talk about in just a moment. Um, so if memory serves me correctly, which it probably does, hopefully, I think I had to wait about a year and a half until the cinema because it's the days before video. Look those up, kids. Big letterbox video things. CDs or DVDs, I should say, Blu-ray, and streaming. All before that stuff. So basically, you could not see this stuff until it came at the theaters, at the cinemas, which was what an experience that was. Beautiful. I had to wait a year and a half, I think. So I would have been about 11, 12 when I first saw this. Um, and oh my God. Oh my God, what an experience it was. It had been built up beforehand because I'd seen little clips on TV and so forth. Um, but the question is not just my personal beliefs on this, because obviously my views count for little. Well, one or two people occasionally listen to me. My dogs occasionally listen to me. My cat never listens to me. My wife occasionally, sometimes. Um, how the hell does this work? And it kind of goes back to the issues that Spielberg found when they were filming it. Like I said, Bruce was being Bruce was being a bit of a diva. Bruce wouldn't work. So they couldn't use the shark for many of the shots that were planned to be used. Now, whether or not, I've seen some interviews, so there is a kind of like, either side to this kind of argument. Either Spielberg realized early on, actually, the less people see of the shark, the better, which became its genius, which became one of the selling points of this film. Or he just put it to kind of thought, I'll just hope for the best, and then realised maybe what he'd got. I don't know. I'll give him his due. I love Spielberg. He has his critics on occasions, but I love Spielberg. My feeling is he realised pretty quickly that actually this story, the book that Peter Benchley wrote, I read the book in that year and a half between my parents not letting me go and see the film. They thought it was fine for me to go and buy the book, or they bought me the book. I think my dad bought me the book. So my dad obviously thought, oh yeah, you can give him the book, but he's not going to go see the film. Um, little realizing the book was pretty graphic, and the book had a number of sex scenes in it where the Hooper character, played by Richard Dreyfuss in the film, has an affair with Brody's wife in the book. Didn't happen in the film. So I got bought this book because I wasn't allowed to go and see the film. I'm reading this book going, where are you going? I'm going upstairs to read my book. Why do you keep reading those 2 or 3 pages? No reason. No reason. So Spielberg realized the story wasn't necessarily about the shark. Um, because what they did was essentially turn this into not just a horror film, but a suspense film. If you think about the credits when they open and the kind of like the kind of point of view vision of the shark swimming through, you don't see the shark. You've got somebody with a camera and you're going through, and you've got John Williams' score. Do 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 do. Will I get YouTube violations for that? I don't know. Do 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 do, and it's just that opening is just incredible. And this is where the drama came from. No CGI. It tapped into, I don't know, some primal fear. If you cannot see it, sometimes that makes it worse, especially when you're a kid. If you think there's something there. If you can't see it, but you can hear something, well, you know it's bad. That opening then beach park sequence where they're having a party, beach party sequence, and the girl goes swimming in the water, and she's attacked, and she's dragged under. Again, you never see the shark because Bruce was probably in his trailer demanding his, which M&M's colours were taken out or whatever. And I'm not playing that today. I'm not playing. Um, so it's not just like I say. It's not about the shark. It's about the suspense. It's about the human drama. Um, It's about an incredible ensemble cast. Um, Roy Scheider, great actor. Really, I still think Roy Scheider is one of those vastly underrated actors. He was in some monsters in the. Well, he was in monsters in the 70s. Marathon Man. oh, others that have gone out of my head. He was in some great films. But he always kind of plays sort of character actors and so forth. French Connection, that's what I was trying to think of. But a huge range of films. I think he won an Academy Award as well for a film later on. So he did get recognition, but he was always, that guy, second on the bill, third on the bill. But he plays Chief Brody in this, and he's so good. And his wife and his family, that dynamic is brilliant. You've got who else did you have? Quint. Um, Oh my God! You've got Hooper. The three of these characters together. You've got Quint, the nasty, cantankerous, humorous, um, character. You've got Hooper, the young kind of college guy that comes on, and this kind of dynamic between the three of these, and the quintessential scenes that these three portrayed together. The scene where they're inside the boat and they talked about the U.S. says Indianapolis. Probably my favorite scene of the film. Many people's favorite scene. Absolutely gorgeous acting, beautifully played. Um, and it's something that it's whenever I want to go back and watch segments of film, that is one scene often I'll go and watch first of all. Um, so you've got this legacy of Jaws. Without Jaws, there would have been no Jurassic Park. There would have been probably no Avengers. There would be no $1 billion openings potentially. It changed how movies were made and marketed. Some may argue it might have changed it for the better in some ways. You had this summer blockbuster that became so every summer after that, then and then companies, film companies were then wanting to get the next big thing, and it did become huge, and it went to the 80s, all the Michael Bay stuff and all that stuff. So maybe there was a kind of flip side to this as well. But the cultural impact it had, sorry, I've got an itchy nose, I apologize. The cultural impact it had in terms of, you know, making its way into other forms of culture, into a wider sort of cultural landscape. Absolutely, the impact you cannot overstate it. It's difficult to overstate what the impact was, and this the way that movies were made, monetized, and Spielberg became Spielberg. Um, Close Encounters wouldn't have happened, would it? Oh my God, I love Close Encounters. I've sometimes put together my five favorite films, and for Spielberg, and they'll often change, except for the fact that Duel, Jaws, and Close Encounters will often intermingle. Saving Private Ryan might be in there as well. Shit, okay, I forgot. Yeah, I'll do another five later on. So what does 50 years on now? 50 years. Oh my God, 50 years. What does it mean? It means, innovative filmmaking. You had an individual who had to, through, was it luck, serendipity, or just pure genius? Probably all three. Went from what could have been a catastrophe. It'd have probably never worked again. It'd have probably never had a movie again. It was his first big, Hollywood sort of, they didn't have a huge amount of money, but it was still, the biggest film that he'd ever worked on. He probably would have never had the career that he did. Um, it certainly means never turn your back in the ocean again. I know that there are people that would suggest, well, um, the effect it had, and I think this is one of Spielberg's regrets, the effect it had on what we thought of sharks and the numbers of sharks and people attacking sharks and that sort of thing because of not just this film but other factors. So there is that as well. Um, but in terms of what it means to in terms of the legacy, my closing thoughts, whatever they may you want to call them, you have a broken shark. You have a first-time major director. Um, you had a movie that made the world sit up because it was a cultural boom. when this thing sort of took off. So, happy 50 years, Bruce. Hope you're doing well. I think you're still around, hopefully. Um, if you love this film, give it another watch. It's 50 years old. Try it again. I watched it recently. My God, it still stands up. It really does stand up. You can tell it's 70s. There's a few iffy haircuts, but visually, it's still stunning. There are scenes throughout which everybody will have their favorite scene, whether or not it's the US Indianapolis scene that talk about. The opening scene when the girl is when the first kind of victim is taken. The pier scene is one of my favorites, where the two guys have stolen their wife's roast. One of the wife's roast, and they're using it as bait, and it almost goes drastically wrong. The finding of Ben Gardner's head, which is the reason I laugh is because being me, like many other people did this, but when I discovered Jaws, when I'd seen Jaws into my teens, and I used to go and watch Jaws a lot. And this again was before real video was really taking over. So people still hadn't had a chance maybe to see it. And for years afterwards, I would go and see the film occasionally. And often there'd be many people in the cinema that had never seen it. One of my favourite things was to get a sadistic pleasure. That's another story. But in this particular case, a sadistic pleasure. Those charges were never proven. A sadistic pleasure in watching people's reaction when Dreyfus's character Hooper dives into the boat to get the tooth out, and out bubbles Ben Garner's heat, all decomposing and that. Boom in your face, and that's when they get the music again. Again, Williamson's brilliant, brilliant use of woo music. And my favourite thing was to watch the reaction of the audience because it gave a genuine fright shock, absolute genuine fright shock. That's one of my favourite scenes, just for the game pleasure of other people's discomfort. But also as well, the film, it takes a while, and this is one of the great things. I mean, back in the 70s and so forth, often it would be a little bit more slower paced. Maybe modern viewers, kids of today, the Gen Zs or whatever the heck they're called, who cares about that? Um, may view it slightly as a kind of, I don't know, slow burner. I don't know. When it picks up, and I love all this film, but when it picks up and you get to the scene where the three of them, Quint, Hooper, and Brody, go on the boat to track down the shark. That segment, which is what, I don't know, 45 minutes. You have the Indianapolis scene in that, but God, it's so exciting. I can be so excited watching. I can remember, when I was finally given permission to go and watch this. I was going to go on. It was on a Saturday. I was going to go and see it. And on the Friday, I remember seeing an advert say, "Oh, it's back at the cinema, local cinema," and they showed the scene where they're just letting off all the air, the floats. Boom, they're shouting at each other, and the Hooper saying, "Give me time," give me all this stuff. Um, I didn't sleep that night. I did not sleep that night. I actually didn't sleep the night after I'd seen it as well, but that was for different reasons because we were going away to the beach the next week, and I didn't swim. I didn't swim. I was 11 years old. I was not gonna swim. So listen, happy 50th anniversary, Jaws and Bruce and Stephen and all that lot. Stephen, me and Stephen, just like that. If you love this little dive into pop culture history, like, subscribe. That'd be nice. I would really appreciate it. I genuinely would. And let me know. Put your comments down below about what's your favourite moment maybe in this film. Tell me what your favourite moment is. Robert Shaw. I've been thinking all the way through what the hell was the actor that played Robert Shaw. Great actor, great British, Irish actor. Um, Brilliant as Quint. And again, I slightly digress. I'm kind of coming back. The rumors that he purposely pissed off and didn't get along with Richard Dreyfuss because their two characters in the film were supposed to be quite antagonistic, and he wanted to make it even more kind of authentic. I love that. If he did that, great. If you didn't do that, that might be another kind of lore, myth that's there's around. Anyway, I've digressed enough. This was supposed to be quite brief. I don't know how long I've gone. Probably way past my 10 minutes that I thought I was going to talk about. If you've never seen Jaws, go and see it. Doo-doo, 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 doo-doo.